Hello, my name is Mr. 3D and welcome to a tutorial of HYTALE, and in this tutorial we actually take a look on how to setting up a dedicated HYTALE server on the Linux CLI or Windows, whatever you prefer. Just take a look at the timestamps of this video and skip ahead to the section you want to know about. So if you want to know about how to install a server on Windows, skip ahead to Windows, and if you want to know how to install a server on Linux, skip ahead on the Linux section. So this is how to install the HYTALE server on a Linux CLI, which is basically pretty forward. So I'm using an Ubuntu server. So I'm using Ubuntu. This means my package manager is apt, but if you use Arch, of course, it's Pacman, and there are other package managers. We only need 2 packages, which pretty much I think should be available on any distribution with any package manager. I don't think they vary much by name. So the first thing we need to install is the Open Java Development Kit 25. That one is needed. Also, what we also have of course, is the HYTALE server manual, which is linked in the description. So we basically follow this guide, except the Java 25 one. It just tells us installing Java 25. It recommends us using Adoptium, which I don't because I'm a badass. So we just install the Java 25 development kit. Again, if you use Arch or anything else, just type in pacman s and type in the exact same command. I'm pretty much sure it should work there as well. What we also are going to install is the unzip package, if you do not have it installed already. And now we, I think, have every package installed that we need. I don't think we need to install now. So now, basically, install yourself a make yourself a directory wherever you want. I'm in the home of my user. I have nothing else in here, so I make a directory called servers, and or let's just call it server, because in my case I only have the HYTALE server, and let's not confuse stuff. So we switch into the server, and now here's the important part. We need our HYTALE downloader. So there are 2 options where we can get it. We can actually extract it from our launcher. Somehow, I haven't really looked into that because it doesn't make that much sense, because here there's just a download link which we will copy our link to, and we just use the wget command, paste in our link, enter, and now we have downloaded that zip file. So let's just unzip that zip file, and in here basically all that is files that actually download our server. So we don't have the server downloaded right now, we just have a file that will download our server. So we have 2 files. We have the exe, which is for Windows, and we have the one for Linux, which we make executable. Like this. And now we just simply run it. And now it will download our stuff, but it doesn't, because we need to verify our user. There are 2 links to this. I think if you take the link above, it basically fills in the code for you already. So let's just copy that. And with the link underneath, we manually would need to enter that link. So you just paste that in your browser, log in with your account, which I'm already on here for some reason, but basically just log in with your HYTALE account, click on approve, and then this one should authorize the app, which I'm not quite sure if it now does it. It's probably, oh no, it did authorize it. So now, as you can see, it's downloading the server, and this one actually is the real server. So we get a 2026.01.13, because that's the today's date, and this is the server. I'm guessing that whenever, I'm pretty sure, whenever you run the HYTALE downloader Linux, you will get the newest version, because if the game gets some sort of update, you probably need to update the server as well. So now you have this script which automates that process for you, kinda. So now if we list again, we see the zip of our server, which again, we will unzip. You of course can unzip it wherever you want. I'm lazy, I'm unzipping it here. So we have a few files here, but it doesn't really matter because it creates a server directory again. So in there is a server directory. And what you can also see, we unzipped an assets.zip, and this one actually is really important because this is kind of like a server resource pack on Minecraft, I guess. It has pretty much all resources stored of the game, and this is probably because HYTALE has full mod support, but probably if you do not install any mods, you can just add stuff in the base game, like you can do with data packs and resource pack in Minecraft Vanilla. You could probably do that using the assets or change the whole textures of the server so you get the assets of the base game. In our case, I moved the assets in the server folder because I just wanted to have the assets exactly where the server files are located. That makes sense for the next step. So we need to start the server now. And there is a command for it to start it, which is on here. And basically this would be the command. And as you can see here, we have an argument that defines what the path to the assets.zip is. In our case, we just need to remove this part and run the whole command inside of the server folder. Because assets then is in that folder. However, we go one step further down and even one step further down again, because in here we have a start command that allows us to change the port. The default port of the game is 5520, and as you can see here in that example, we can change now the port to 25565, which is kind of an Easter egg because that's the default port of Minecraft. So we copy that, and now by running this command and removing that path to here, we could already start up the server. However, what we are going to do is we run our editor and I make myself a start server.sh and I copy paste it in here. Let's change the port to something like 25560. Can be whatever you want. And change this to assets. Because now, if we exit that and save that and again make it executable, we now don't need to remember the command. We just need to run the start server in here. So what we do is a point / start server, run that whole thing, and voila, the server is starting up. Also, don't be alarmed. Here are a lot of warnings. That's probably because it's early access. I don't know if it actually is the way they want it to be, but there are a lot of warnings. The server still runs. I tried it out. It does work. I don't know why there are a lot of warnings, but there are. So this starts up. I just leave that be because I want you to see that. So, and now what we need to do, no server tokens configured, as you can see here. We need to authenticate the server again in here. So what we are doing is now we type in /auth login, and on here it tells you this here in this step. It also tells you to type in device. So we are doing this, and we get again those two links. Now the opposite order, but it's still the same link. So we put that in here. We click approve again. We approve that whole thing, and it should take a bit, but it should approve it. And tell us that we authenticated. So, did work. However, that's the important part. As you can see here in this warning, credentials stored in memory only. This means our credentials are only stored in the memory currently. So whenever we restart the server, we need to authenticate it again. We can change that and store the authentication in an encrypted file, which you probably want to do. You don't need to do much. You just, as it says it here, type in that command of auth persistent and just type in encrypted. Type enter, and now those credentials are saved in an encrypted file. Meaning, in theory, whenever you restart the server, you shouldn't need to authenticate it again. So now I'm pressing Ctrl and C because I'm on Linux. This shuts it down. And now it did create other files, which we won't really go over. So there's a mods folder where you can just import your mods. There's a whitelist where you can add players to the whitelist. Pretty much the same as in Minecraft. You can see the commands for yourself. You can OP players and stuff. And honestly, I haven't looked into that myself. I just looked into how to setting up a server. So we go into config.json with our text editor. And as you can see here, we have some default values. So we can set the max players. We can set it to 10. We have a max view distance on the server like we have on Minecraft with a server password that I haven't actually tested out, so let's just set it to hello to test it out. And this is a tutorial. So I don't even know where this one shows up. This is the MOTD like on Minecraft, and I don't know why it needs a server name. You don't need to put that in, so HYTALE tutorial. I don't know, just type it in like that and save it. So this is pretty much all you need to do on the Linux side. Now we can start it up again. And since this is done in a terminal, the whole terminal counts as our terminal of the server. So if you close the terminal, obviously, the server stops. So you need to keep the terminal open. There are a lot of different stuffs you can do. This is, as an example, is a virtual machine. In theory, so this where we installed the server in isn't even a machine I'm currently running on, which also is Linux, but this is Arch and this is Ubuntu. So there are a lot of things you can do. You can make a systemd entry to start that in the background. You can use tmax, just make a window, open the terminal and detach from it. There are a lot of stuff. Google it. There is a lot you can do. In this case, if you close it, the server stops. So just keep it running. Okay? Do that? Great. So this has been the Linux part. So now welcome to the Windows section of the video. Now let's see how we can install the server on Windows, which is pretty much straightforward. It is exactly the same as on Linux, but we do it anyways. So also don't be confused, I use a virtual machine in order to have a fresh install of Windows, so there should be nothing unexpected happening. So we see two mouse cursors. And it is a bit laggy because it is a virtual machine. However, what we are going to do is we open up our browser and go on how a HYTALE server setup. You probably already have seen this if you followed the Linux tutorial. If you haven't seen it, this is the site where you have a whole tutorial on setting up your server. So you basically don't even need this tutorial if you would just read that, but I'm a visual learner too, so I'm not angry at you. So now let's type in Java 25 download, since that's the one that we need. So my language now is set to German, but it doesn't really matter. Go on the Java website, and actually I don't know if this is Java 25 now. So let's head back. Let's go to Java downloads on here. This is the site where you can find the development kit of Java 25, and at the bottom you could also find where it is. That's the reason why it's a bit laggy. So here it is. On here we click on Windows and we click on the installer. There's an MSI, there's an exe. It doesn't really matter what you select. Just click on it, execute it. And then the installer should open up pretty quickly, hopefully. It does take some time because, again, virtual machine. So we open up our installer. It should open up, preparing to install, blah, 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 blah. It's pretty much the same as just using the MSI directly. And now we should install the Java development kit. So now what we are going to do is we need to download the server downloader. There are two ways of doing this. It's either by copying it from your launcher. I don't have a launcher here, so I can't do that. Also, I have not done it this way. I just scrolled a bit down here to the HYTALE downloader CLI, and here there is the HYTALE downloader.zip, which I just downloaded. So we take this file, we, in my case, cut it out, and on the desktop I will now create us a server folder. In here I move that, we open up that, we don't open it up, we right click on it and just simply press extract all. Then we click on extract. However, this way it now created us another folder, which I don't really want, so I just take those files and move them back up here, and I delete those 2 files because we no longer need them. So what this is this those are 2 files that now really download us our server. So there's one for Linux, which we used in the tutorial before, and there is one for Windows, which we execute right now. All it does, opens up a terminal with 2 links. Pretty much you want to use the link above, the other one is the same, but you manually need to enter code. Why do that if you can just copy the first code, copy it into your browser, and now you need to log in with your HYTALE account, which I don't know what you used. If you used Microsoft for your HYTALE account, use that. If you used an email like I did, do that. I'm going to log in now. So what always happens for me is if I go on the page and I log in the first time, it basically brings me to the dashboard and not to the verification site, since this information seems not to be stored. But now I'm logged into the website. I close the window again because I don't want to share personal information. So now all I need to do is open up that link again, and now it should lead me to this page where you basically just press approve. And when you press approve, you need to verify that you're human, and then for some reason I need to enter the password again. So I signed in again. Now the app is authorized. So if we go into our command line, we now see that our actual server zip is being downloaded. So after the download is finished, the terminal closes, and now in this directory we have our server file, and this is the actual server. So whenever you execute this file, we download the newest version of the server, which you probably need to update at some point again when HYTALE updates. So now we need to extract that one again. So we extract it to here again. So when this is done, I get another folder in here, and I just delete the zip since I no longer need it, and also make sure to clear out the recycling bin since I don't have much storage on that virtual machine, so I need every storage I get. We go in here and we have a server folder and an assets one. The assets one is really important because the assets one contains pretty much all resources of the game. Since HYTALE aims to be like Minecraft, where you can add stuff without mods in the base game itself, you probably want to add the models and the textures in here, or you can even edit the server textures, and you probably do it in here. This is like a server resource pack. So what I like to do is I just like to take those assets and put it in the server as well. That folder doesn't really make much sense if we have it like this, so we could just in theory take everything out here, since we don't need another folder in a folder, but it doesn't really matter. So now we have our assets, HYTALE server, and our HYTALE server, which we could now execute and the server would run. However, we are going to do something differently. We go back to our page, scroll down a bit, and this is our command how we are going to run our server. However, we scroll down a little bit further because there is another command, which is this one. Because this command allows us to change the port of the server. This is done using the startup command. You don't change it in a configuration file. The default port of HYTALE is 5520, but in this case they showed us how you could change it to 25565, which is a neat little Easter egg since this is the default port of Minecraft. So what we are going to do is we are going to copy that file. We are going to make a new text file. Go into the text file, paste this stuff in here, and now this is important. Here it wants to specify the path to our assets.zip. Since it's in here, you can just remove the path to and make it assets, and it finds it. And now we can change our port to whatever we want. So we make 5560. This is now our port of the server. I did use the same one for the Linux one as well, so the later tutorial makes sense and uses the same port. What we are now going to do is we click on Save As, and we don't want to save it as a text document. We want to select all files, and now we call it start server.png. BAT. And we save it as this. So now we can just delete our text file, and now we have a startup file of the server. So if we execute this one, our terminal opens up and the server should actually start with the port 5560. This is an early access version, so there are a lot of warnings inside of this terminal. Probably in the future, hopefully, there are not this many warnings. Probably none at all in the default game, hopefully. But currently, this is totally normal. I was confused as well. Here, click on allow. And now our server started up. However, the server also needs to be authenticated. So it already tells us how to do it. We just type /auth login. And now it asks us how, with the browser, with the device. We just select device. And we get another link. And we do the exact same thing we did before again. So just take this link, paste it in your browser, and click on approve. Hopefully I don't need to enter the code another time. Oh, it asks for verification that I'm human. Does it work? Yeah, it worked. So now we are authenticated. However, we get a message already here, which tells us credentials stored in memory only. They will be lost on restart. Basically, what it says here, our authentication is only stored in the memory, so whenever we restart the server, it is lost. So you would need to do this each time you start your server. However, we can just type /auth persistence and type encrypted. So what we did now is we saved our information in an encrypted file, and now we don't need to authenticate the server each time. So now with Ctrl+C, I can just shut down the server, close the terminal, and there you go. You already have your server. So we have now a config.json, which we could edit a notepad as an example here, and there you basically have your default settings. So you could set an MOTD, which I still don't currently know where it shows up. You could set a server password, what's the max player, what's the server view radius, and a lot of other stuff. I currently don't know. You can also, however, define what mods are loaded on the server, which you can define here. Haven't done that myself currently. And you can put the mods into this folder, since HYTALE has an integrated mod system, and there already is a pre-installed mod. Interesting. So you could do that. You could whitelist players, make players operators. You have some permissions.jsons. I haven't looked into that myself. You need to check that out for yourself. This is just a guide on how to starting up a server and getting it to work. So this is basically the Windows version of doing it. With if you followed everything correctly and you start up this server, this should now be a working server that you can connect to. Keep in mind, you need to keep the terminal open. If you close the terminal, the server stops. Makes sense, doesn't it? Well, yeah, that was the Windows part of this tutorial. So, finally, we are at the last step, and it's not really the most complicated part, but at the same time it is for me, because it requires a bit of explanation, and it is something I can't really show you, while meanwhile at the same time I can kind of show you. So what we now need to do is we need to make our port publicly accessible from everywhere. So this is called port forwarding. So basically this allows everyone from outside to join inside. If you host a server just privately in your local network, so if you have a brother in the other room, your setup already should work if you're in the same VLAN, but most of you already are, so it should work. So in theory, for local networking, your server should be up and running, and you can access it by typing localhost. So you can just access the server by going into the address line of the server and add this address to your server. The port 5560 is the one we specified. and you could connect to the server. However, we want to make this server publicly accessible, of course, because we want everyone to be able to join. So we need to port forward. Why is this the complicated step now? Because it really isn't, but it depends on your router, because you have a different router than I have. I use a Unify router. Maybe you also use a Unify router, but most people use something different. So it could be an Asus router, it could be a Fritzbox, it could be, I don't know, any sort of router, 40 gate. I don't know. The problem is, based on your router, port forwarding is always different. So you basically have to look that up for your router. But I can show you how you can access your router, and I also will show you how you can port forward in the Unify controller. But it will probably be a lot different for you. So first, we need to access our gateway, so the router. And to do that, we need to know what our gateway address is. In my case, I already put it in because we are already on my router. It's 10.0.10.1. How to find that out? In Linux, open up your terminal and type IP route. And basically the first thing standing here is your gateway. So this tells you what you need to put in the address bar, and now I know 10.0.10.1 is my gateway and I can access it. When you access it, you will come to a login page. For me, this is my Unify account, because that's how Unify works. You can also create a local account. For you, it's probably a password that is at the back of your router. If you did find it and put it in and you're now in the interface, please change the password. Change it to something secure, write it down, store it somewhere safely. If you're on Windows, you can just type in ipconfig, and then it also shows you your standard gateway. So there's a line that says standard gateway, and that address tells you what you need to type in your browser. So now you're in your dashboard, and basically this is where things vary. Because for me, in order to port forward something, it is even a bit more hidden than on most routers, so you probably will find it a bit quicker than I did. So basically all you need to do is you go into settings on Unify. I have to click on the policy table because you can do a lot of stuff with Unify controllers. Create a new policy, select port forwarding, and now we can give it a name. In our case, I just call it HYTALE server. The WAN IP address is already put in here for me. So, and I have two types of ports, which is basically the same port. So I will put in the same port in both of those. What it basically does is, internally I can have a different port than externally. So internally I could make it 5560, but externally make a different port. Doesn't really matter. I could do that with this router. Here's the difference between Minecraft and HYTALE. Minecraft needs TCP and UDP for a server to work. HYTALE doesn't. HYTALE only needs UDP. They use a different protocol, which is called QUIC, and that only communicates over UDP. And here in forward IP address, we need to put in the IP address where the server is running on. So on Windows again, you could also find that out with ipconfig. It would tell you your IPv4 address, and that's the one you need to put in. Here on Linux with IP route, it also tells me what the IP address of my machine is, which in this case would be this address. This is my machine. I could just copy that and put it in here. Theoretically, that isn't really the device I installed the server on, but let's just, for the sake of this tutorial, say I installed it on this machine. So now I configured everything correctly. And if I would now click add, I added this rule, and now my server would be publicly accessible. However, and here is a downside, and this is also something that's cool now because I showed it on because I have two internet connections at different locations, and where I'm currently at, I'm running at exactly a problem you can't really fix. So it's good that I can actually showcase this to you. So there are a lot more, but there are basically 3 different kinds of IP addresses you can have. You can have a static IP address. This means that your public IP address will never ever change. Then you can have a dynamic IP address. This means your public IP address will change maybe every day, maybe it changes every month, but it can change. It depends on settings of your ISP, so your internet service provider. And here's the biggest problem. So the first one, the static one, is the best case because you have a static IP. You don't need to worry about anything. The second one sucks a bit, but it's not really that bad. So you have a dynamic address. That means your public IP address will change at some point, and you just have to send your friends the new public IPv4 address of you. You don't need to change anything. You don't need to update anything. You just need to send them the new IPv4 address, which you can find out by going on the website whatismyip.com. On there you can find out what your public IPv4 address is, because this is what we need to put into HYTALE together with the port to connect. But now there's the third one, and I actually have that one, and this one is called a CNAT. What that means is that your ISP routes you behind another router, so you share one public IPv4 address with a lot of other users too. So you don't even get a dynamic address. You don't get your own public IPv4 address at all. It is shared with other users. And what that means is you can't port forward. It's totally impossible, because in order for you to port forward, you would need to log in, basically under quotation marks, you would also need to log into the router interface of your ISP and port forward that port again, which you can't do obviously because the firewall is from your ISP. So if you're behind a CNAT, you can't port forward. You can't make your server publicly accessible using this method. There are methods around it. You could still use Hamachi, how we used back then. You could take a look into Tailscale. You could set up a VPN tunnel to a VPS and host it on there. So there are some options. But this option to just open the port won't work for you. And how do you know if you're behind a CNAT? Basically, if your router, like it does for me, shows you an address that does not fit into a public address. As an example, this here, what's in this line would be my public IPv4 address. However, here it shows me 10.10.0.11 because at my place it's behind another router. But this basically would be what you would see if you're behind a CNAT. So you would see an address like 168. Yeah, you wouldn't see 172, but 168. Or was it 192? I'm got a bit confused now, but 168 or 192 or 10.0.0. If you see anything like this in your WAN IP address, it means you're behind a CNAT because that's not your public IPv4 address. What you also can just check is, if you go on the website what is my IP, it shows you your public IP address, so the correct one, and then you can compare that address that it shows you on what is my IP, and you can compare this address with the one that shows in your router, if your router shows your public IPv4 address, and you can compare those two, and if those two don't fit, then this means you're behind a CNAT. And again, if this happens to you, you can't do anything about it. So in this case, I couldn't even host the server. So what I just did here wouldn't work. The server would not be publicly accessible. However, for the sake of the showcase, I'm doing the exact same thing now at my external location, and then it should work, and we can take a look into how it would look into HYTALE. So now we are inside of HYTALE, and basically all we need to do is we need to add a server. The name is completely pointless, so you can put in whatever you want. It's just so you know what kind of server it is, so I can call it subscribe. And the connection address now is where your public IPv4 address is, so the one that you find out whatismyip.com. So you put it in here. I put a domain in here because it is linked to mine, which you don't see right now. At the end of it, use a double point and then append the 5560 port to it. If you use the default port, so 5540, you don't need to append the port. So if you use the default port, you didn't change the port, it would work with only the address, because the game defaults to the default port. But if you have any other port, you need to change it to something different. Also, HYTALE currently, if you're a bit more advanced, does not support SRV records, so there's no way around it. If you have another port, you need to specify it. So now we can add that server, and now we should be able to join. So let's give it a try. Connecting, and loading world, there you go. We connect to the server, and there we go. We are on the server now. And it works. The connection is really bad. That's probably because of my internet connection that I'm having right here, and I'm having some problems right now. But it does work. The server is online. We can join it. Everything seems to work perfectly. And yeah, that should be it. And if you have any more questions or wanna join my small community, please, because I don't have friends, then maybe check out my Discord, leave a like, subscribe. Hope to see you in another video. Have a wonderful evening or a good day, and see you around.